Hello, and welcome to Madmen's Knowledge, a podcast where we answer questions no one is asking and argue about things no one cares about in order to grant you insight. Insight as to what? We don't know, but here we are. We're your hosts, the Madmen in question, Hayne and Griffin, and our topic of discussion today is how to deal with immortal prisoners. Let's get into it.
All right. So let's start small here with, a petty immortal criminal. Like the small crimes, pickpocketing, shoplifting, things like that. In that case, I feel like you can throw them, like, arguably, if they're immortal, like throwing them in jail isn't going to be all that effective because it's going to be, well, actually, first let's say, is this like an immortal person that's existed for a very long time, or is this like a new immortal?
I don't know that it strictly matters.
Well, because my thought is that, like, if it's a new immortal and you like throw them in jail for a couple years, like that's gonna be a pain in the ass for them. But like over time, it's gonna be less and less of a punishment for them and more of a mild inconvenience. And so
That's
the
true.
deterrent
They can do the
would,
time, so they can do the crime.
yeah, exactly. So it's sort of like, that deterrent sort of goes down. So like as they commit more and more petty crimes, like you would need to either, like, I feel like you'd need to harshen their sentences over time.
Well, yeah, but that already happens. I don't know that petty crimes are strictly relevant here because I think that the time that is allotted for petty crimes, like 6 months, sure, for an immortal, it'll go by in a blink of an eye, but it keeps them off the streets for 6 months. And if their goal is to be like a serial robber or something, where they are constantly committing these crimes, like, yeah, they can just do that to the end of time. And eventually they'll just get longer and longer sentences until eventually they just get life.
Hmm.
I think that where the issue really comes in is when you talk about them having any supernatural abilities other than
Immortality.
simply
Like if
living forever. Yeah.
Yeah, so like if it's just like your regular average Joe that just like happens to not be killable, like he doesn't. Are you talking invincibility, or are we talking like if you die, you're just gonna get resurrected?
Well, that's the thing, is that that becomes a trickier question because if you're dealing with somebody who can respawn, they can just find a way to get themselves killed in jail. And so for them, there's not really a problem there. Like they don't have to worry about uh they don't have to worry about ever getting uh locked up for too long. I mean, and depending on where they respawn. Like if they just come back to life in the same place, like after a
Like if their
short
body just
duration.
regenerates.
Yeah. Well, then you've got a problem. But it's I think that
I feel like
those are
that.
the people that are problematic to deal with. Because if you've got a person who is immortal but not invulnerable, they will eventually die of old age, but are impervious to damage, then you just give them the death penalty. Which sounds rough,
Hold
but
on,
like,
hold
you
on, hold
know,
on, hold on. You said if they're immortal but not invulnerable.
yes.
Okay,
They
sorry. I
cannot be harmed, but they can sorry. They can be harmed, but they cannot die of old age.
Yeah, I mean that's easy. I feel like if you're invulnerable and you don't die of old age, like you're just a being that exists in perpetual
Perpetuity.
existence. I don't.
Yes.
Yeah. I feel like that's where you start having issues. I don't know.
Yeah,
Like
well,
how
because if you are able to live through anything. Like there's an argument to be made for uh the death penalty for small crimes for people like that. Cuz it's like, hey, if you're just going to shrug and just continue living forever, you're going to be costing people money. Like it costs money to keep people in the prison system.
Yes.
Um So in that way, it might be better. But when you think about the opposite, is a person who uh, is truly immortal. They are both immortal and they are unaging and invulnerable.
Unkillable.
That's when you start getting problems because you hit a
You don't really
point
have a
where
choice.
you cannot arrest them, or you just wouldn't want to. Because their crime has to outweigh the cost. The cost of having them on the street and potentially doing these crimes has to be greater than the cost to effectively mitigate them.
Yeah.
And my argument for this is being frozen.
Like we just cryogenically freeze them.
Not even cryogenically. You just freeze those suckers.
You just pop them in the ice.
Just pop
throw
them in the ice and
Antarctic.
just, yeah, see what happens. Because
And then
in all
that
honesty, like it doesn't matter if they're immune to damage, then you just say, "Hey, I don't care. I'll just freeze them solid and be done with it."
okay.
Um
An interesting idea
and
for
that
prison.
and that works against respawning entities as well. Because if you freeze them solid, and that is where you would have to cryogenically freeze them. If you get a person who is able to regenerate every time they die, all they have to do is get themselves killed in prison, and then they're just vibing out on the streets again. But you can effectively prevent that by freezing them but keeping them alive. Because, that is the only true way to incarcerate them at that point.
All right. So, hold on. I don't know if you saw this, but there was a headline a while ago where a prisoner who had been sentenced to life had died in prison, and like he had been declared dead, and then he came back to life through some sort of medical procedure. Um, and so he tried to argue that he had served his life sentence because he had died. Um, but the judge over the case basically said that life sentence was not for the rest of your life as like the time period, but it was as long as you are alive, you
Yes,
are
as
to
long
be
as
in
you may
jail.
live. Which
Yeah.
which holds here. If you have this situation where you've got this immortal prisoner, you want them to, or not immortal, but respawning. If you have a respawning entity that you're trying to imprison, you still want it to carry. You want the life sentence to carry after each resurrection, because otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah. Okay, so consider this was my thought, all right? Instead of like freezing them and like leaving them on Earth, just like yeet that bitch into space. Like just
Also,
strap them on a
also a
rocket.
good. Yeah,
You just strap them on a rocket and you just throw them out into the abyss.
that's true. Because if they are undying, it is, arguably worth it to just yeet them into the abyss and be done with it.
Yeah. But
That's a
so
that's a bit cruel, though, don't you think?
well, that's what I was gonna. That's why I was using this as my segue into the next part. Is it ethical to imprison a prisoner for life, like using one of these methods? Like, if you maintain a prison where you're like, treating them like a normal prisoner, but just for all of time. Yes, it's gonna be very expensive, but I feel like that's a humane way of detaining them. Whereas like throwing them in the ice, like throwing them in the Arctic, or like yeeting them into space or like leaving them on the moon or some shit like that. Like that would be they'd be in like unless they're invulnerable to all damage, and like that includes like natural factors of like needing to breathe or like eat or drink. Um, like if they still have to have those like basic necessities met, but they won't die if they don't. Um, then like doing any of those things, they're going to be like chronically starving and like
That's a good
thirsty.
point.
And so like can we like so we're saying that this immortal person is human. And so it's like can you justify like I don't think you could justify like a person who's just like a serial like pickpocket to like an eternity of torment and despair for
No, I
picking
think
pockets
it's
for
anything
years.
that carries a life sentence would, because that is a life sentence. I think at the point where you've got a life sentence, like that's when you yeet them into space, you know, because
Yeah.
that is the point at which
Okay, so
you stop
like a
caring.
regular murderer. So like guy commits a like first degree murder or something.
Yes.
Like is that like all right, we're yeeting you into space now.
Yep.
All right.
First degree
Okay.
murder is premeditated.
Yeah. Like
Um,
just
so that is yes the worst crime you can commit theoretically.
okay. But so like consider like genocidal leader.
Same thing. Yeet
Um
them into space.
yeah.
Hope that the
So
homicidal immortal in space kills the genocidal leader in space.
okay. I don't know. This is I mean, I feel like that's the best way to deal with it. Is it the most ethical? I don't know.
Only in extreme situations. Only when their crime outweighs the the humane implications of yeeting someone to space and then leaving them there.
Okay, so consider like I don't know, hold on. So like consider I guess my what I'm trying to get to, the question I'm trying to ask is like is there a line that you like how do we define the line that we cross to get to that point where it's just like you're now going to be yeeted to space? Because and like for some people, like the whole point of the like justice system is or should be to reform criminals and to deter them from performing those acts. And so you should like pay retribution for what you did, but you should also like reform so that you don't do it again. Like, could you?
Well, the point of a
Uh,
life sentence is that the act that you have committed is so heinous that the belief that you can be reformed is ridiculous.
mhm.
Uh,
So
so at
okay,
that point, it's like, hey, we've got this immortal dude, and he's committed an act that we consider to be you can't come back from. And at that point, I think ice is probably the best option here. Space, I can, you know,
space is very permanent.
space is very permanent. Like, with all the
Don't yeet
Innocence
that.
Project and things, it's like, hey, maybe we should take a second look at some of these cases from time to time. What if you accidentally convict an immortal person and yeet them into space? And
Yeah,
then
you've
like
just now
10
damned an
years
innocent
later,
man.
and 10 years later somebody comes out and is like, "Oh, hey, yeah, I was lying on my witness report. Like that guy was totally fine." Like then you got to either launch a rocket into space
Go
or
pick him up.
which, in 10 years you can go a hell of a long way.
That's a good point. Um, okay, but so all right. So like, I hate going to this extreme, but it's just the most convenient, so bear with me. But so like if Hitler were immortal, that bitch is just getting yeeted to space. Like there's no redeeming that guy.
I would assume so.
Yeah. And we said that, but so then there's a great degree between like first degree homicide and um you know, genocide of an entire race. That's kind of
Yes.
a redundant statement. Ignore that. Um but so we both so like homicide like you said that like homicide is a life sentence. That bitch is getting yeeted to space. So like what's a crime where you would need to be detained for an extended period of time but not get yeeted to space? Like for example, like large scale fraud or like you make like a multi-level marketing scheme.
Well, that's a multi-level marketing schemes are completely legal, horrifyingly. Uh, um,
Like or I meant like a pyramid like an illegal pyramid scheme, all
oh,
right? Like,
okay. It's difficult to assess because you hit the point of yeeting into space. Does yeeting into space become the new prison system for immortal people? Do you yeet everybody into space in a controlled manner? Um, like, is that how the prison system works now? Is it instead of
well,
being detained in a prison for 10 years, you get thrown into space if you're immortal for 5 years and then get brought back?
no, because I think that the implication of our question is like you have there's like one immortal prisoner, and he's the standout of everyone else. Like everyone else is totally normal, and regular prison would work fine for them.
I think if you've got one immortal prisoner, and this is the only immortal prisoner that's ever going to cause you problems, you just throw him into space. Because, and we're assuming that this person is fully guilty. If
Yeah.
they have been seen, they have publicly committed these crimes multiple times, or something like that. And everybody generally agrees, hey, this is something we gotta deal with.
Mm-hmm. This
That is
isn't
when
just
it is
like
okay to just chuck someone into space.
okay, but all right. So okay. So what spawned this question for me? There was two things that spawned this question for me. One of them is probably more agreeable to you, so I'll go with that one first. So I was talking about this with Ethan, and his idea, well, his thought was that it's like you shouldn't yeet people into space because that's basically casting somebody into hell, and humans don't have the right to make that decision. Um, but so his suggestion was we just create the pit essentially, and you just like we dig out a big hole in the middle of like the desert or something and just throw the guy in there, and like they just exist in the
Come
hole.
on, they'd make it out.
Okay,
They're
yes, with
immortal. They can literally just chew a tunnel into the walls.
okay, yes, I think that you'd obviously do some maintenance to not let them chew through the walls of this pit. But like, I don't know. Like, I'm trying to get at, is there anything like is there a level where we're not just going to detain you for like 2 years um because you've committed minor crime, and we're gonna yeet this bitch into space, where we just like banish them to the pit for like 100 years until they've like reformed.
I don't know that anything is going. The issue is that everything is so ineffectual. It's you've got no ability to stop this person from committing crimes. And honestly, it doesn't even matter. Like 100 years could be absolutely nothing to them.
That's true.
Also, you got to consider what they can do in 100 years in the pit. Like they could scheme some shit.
They come out of the pit and just immediately topple all world governments.
I mean, yeah. It's something you have to consider.
Yeah. So here's a ridiculous hypothetical. Let's say we yeet the immortal prisoner into space, and they are in space for a very long time, absorbing all that universe radiation. And then, by some random act of chance, they're hit by a meteor and then redirected back to Earth. And they have now returned an incredibly irradiated immortal prisoner that just, like, basically just melts people that comes near them. What then? What do we do then?
Um, hmm. It is difficult to assess, but I believe that with yeeting into space, you have to. This is going to sound really awful. You have to yeet them with a pretty decent velocity.
Yeah.
Because you're going to want them to be moving quickly so that even if they do strike something or somehow gain a way to, because they can't move in space, you can't, there's nothing to push off of, and you can't even generate your own momentum because there's nothing there. You could, like, if you threw them at a certain velocity in a certain direction, they might go into a black hole.
And that's the end goal. Is just
And that's
yeet
the
the
end
immortal
goal, is
prisoner
just to
into a black
throw
hole.
them into a black hole so that they cannot return, they can never escape, and they're just sitting there for all eternity on the surface of a black hole. That's the end goal.
Holy shit.
Hey man, that's what a life sentence means.
Okay. Fair enough. All right.
Also, I'm assuming the point at which we have to consider, like, at the point at which this is considered, like, this is a landmark case. Like, we've got probably the governments of all of the entire world, like, considering, like, hey, how do we properly imprison this person? And at that point, I feel like the person has to have done something so awful, like an immortal prisoner. I think even with a life sentence, I don't think we start considering having to actually deal with the immortal prisoner until the immortal prisoner is the most dangerous person on Earth. You know?
Okay.
Like, so we're assuming an immortal serial killer here, where they
Yeah.
could theoretically just go for the rest of time and just start killing people and continually do this for the rest of time. Like, because they have to be so dangerous for people to decide that, hey, a life sentence is not enough. Like, it's just putting them in a prison is not enough. Like, you have to do some, you have to be, because of his immortality, they have to be the most dangerous person on Earth, and they need to be put down and, like, just taken away. There is no reality where they make it out of this. Like you need to ensure that they will never ever escape. And at that point, I don't think many people are going to be arguing against chucking them in a black hole.
What about yeeting them into the sun?
Um,
That'd be a little bit faster.
they wouldn't die, I don't think.
Yeah, but I feel like also if you yeeted them into the sun, the gravitational pull would be strong enough that like there'd be no way for them to escape.
Um, yeah, and you start getting into an issue there where, like, if something can come, okay, so if something can respawn, the best solution is in the ice. Because
Yes.
they could be killed in space in any number of ways. So if they can
They would.
respawn, you have to put them in the ice so that they are in a controlled environment where they cannot be killed, but are also not free. And so, but if they're immortal, if you put them in the sun and they cannot be harmed by the sun, they can theoretically just start pushing against it, and because they cannot be like killed, they can just push and resist against it for all eternity.
Like, what would that accomplish?
I don't know because frightfully there's a lot of semantics to the immortality question here, and it's about what
It's like, okay,
because
here's my
can they
imagination.
actually be killed? Because like that's the thing is if you hurl them into the surface of the sun and they are instantly disintegrated, like can they come back from that? Can they even be disintegrated?
My imagination of this is that, like, you're playing on creative mode in Minecraft. Like, that's the level of invincibility you have.
So complete invulnerability.
Basically. Like, creative mode minus flying. And obviously the ability to, like, spawn things. Um,
Yeah, that's frightening to think about.
it is.
The sun also an effective option, but depending on the semantics of their invulnerability, I think black hole is more effective. Um, just because
So,
nothing can escape a black hole. Light cannot escape a black hole. So I am fairly confident that that is the most secure um,
option.
imprisonment for them. Yeah.
Okay. So, well, I was also going to say with the sun, I don't know how solar flares fully work, but like I guess there is a potential that like they could get hit by a solar flare and shot out onto somewhere else.
Yeah. That's why I think black hole is the most stable option is because nothing escapes ever 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 ever.
Hmm. Okay. So here's another. I have one more thought on this topic that's dark before we go into the more lighthearted ridiculousness. All right.
Oh, okay.
So, or at least that's my plan. If you have any other
No,
like
I want to
subplots.
know what your dark thought is cuz
Okay. So consider you are the immortal prisoner, but you haven't yet committed any crimes. You are just you're existing as an immortal person, and by virtue of the fact that you are immortal and you've ceased to age, you're not damaged by anything. You have just existed for a very long time at this point. And in the modern era, I feel like it would get to the point where you would become very well known for the fact that you haven't died yet. You're the oldest person.
yes.
Um, and so there's a lot of good that can come from that. For example, you can go into so for example, if there is a burning building or something, you can just walk in there without any equipment because you're completely invulnerable and just like rescue people from these burning buildings. Or more serious things, like you can go into like bomb squad scenarios and like dismantle a bomb, and if you fail, you have blown up but you don't get hurt by it.
Yeah.
So you're doing all this good. But as we see a lot in popular media and sort of history, that very powerful people tend to also arouse a great deal of suspicion and fear from them because there is the potential that you could use this uh, ability for evil. You could, like, you have shown, let's say you've shown no inclination, no sort of idea. People are just completely baselessly afraid that you will turn against the government and that you will, instate a world order where you can like you cannot be killed. Thus, um, no one can stop you from doing what you want. And so, as a preemptive measure to stop you from taking over or committing, wide-scale crimes, the world as a whole yeets you into a black hole out of suspicion and fear.
Uh-huh.
Like, how realistic do you think that is? And
I think it's
assuming.
fairly realistic. I think at least the idea that they could become frightened of you to the point that they would want to do that or put that plan into action is totally feasible. I do not think that they would be able to carry through with it without you having committed some crime first or shown some malice or some hostility. So it would not legally happen. I think they would have to kidnap you and
Wrap you onto a rocket.
strap you onto a rocket and send you into space. Um, yeah, I think that, and I think that that could and would happen if, um, if it came to pass as you said, and they consider you to be a threat and all of that.
Hmm.
Um,
So, go ahead.
the, in terms of the bomb squad, you could be the most effective bomb defusal agent ever because you don't have to be trained. You can just go eat the bomb. And since you cannot be killed, the bomb detonates inside. You don't even have to eat the bomb. You just put it in your mouth. That might there might be something to be said about, it opening your mouth though. Um but like you could if you could eat a bomb or in some other way put it into your body.
Like
Like
you like the grenade, like you throw your body over a grenade or something.
basically. I mean, yeah, you could also just curl up over it, which would be considerably less gruesome than watching you eat a bomb. Um, but in any case, you have this. Um, See, but then it would still do damage to the ground. Like you eat the bomb, nothing happens. It tries to detonate, and maybe some comes out of your mouth, but you have almost entirely destroyed the destructive capability of this bomb.
Okay, but like, what if it's like a nuke? Like those things are big. Like, how are you gonna eat a nuke?
You'd have to find a way to. Because you cannot crouch over an atom bomb and absorb the explosion.
Shove it up your ass.
Yes.
Oh, that's gruesome. That's gruesome to think about.
See, that's the thing is that there's no way to defuse an atom bomb. You have to just pray that they don't set it off, or at least not for Immortal Jimmy. Um,
Okay, so I was the last thing I'm gonna say, trying to stick a little bit serious here is, so like let's say you're on the other end, like Immortal Jimmy is like emerges and is existed, and you exact same scenario that I described earlier where he's completely innocent, like no visible um or subtle forms of malice. Like this is just a genuinely nice dude that's just doing what he can. And you witness, people conspiring to basically throw him into a black hole because they're suspicious of it. Like, how would you react to that? And like, what do you like? What could an individual,
I mean,
like, as
I
an
think you
individual, like,
probably have to put a stop to it. But again, it's like I would love to end global warming, but
but you can't really
I
do
don't, I
that as
don't,
an
I cannot
individual.
overcome the wills of the rich.
Yeah. God. Anyway, all right. So now here's a potential solution to deal with the immortal prisoner. All right, you ready for this?
I am.
You create an immortal snail, and as soon as it
No.
touches,
Boo. I hate those memes. They
I
make me
love
angry.
those memes. I love those memes so much.
They're just not good. The first one was good because it was a creative callback. It's like the game memes, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like,
No, I
it is a callback to something that we all experienced. And the first one was legitimately funny because of that. After that, it got significantly worse. All of them that are like, the stupid frickin' Dr. Pepper meme.
Oh, I love the freaking Dr. Pepper meme. Oh
The
my
Dr.
god.
Pepper meme is great, but the one where he's like, I have to create it. The snail finds my lab. Yeah, it's just the whole
No, I
situation.
love that. I love that so much. Be- Because it's just the stupidest combination of memes that it's like, oh my god. You've seen the fucking it's the symbol, it's like the like oversimplified Lost comic where it's just like the black lines
Yeah,
in the foreground. Yeah. Like it's one of those, but it's just like current memes and I love it so much.
yeah. But I do
But
not
anyway,
believe that the construction and deployment of a invincible snail would be the
enough
correct way
stop.
to go about putting a. I think that would be more expensive than just yeeting them into a black hole.
Oh, I'm certain it would be because you have to research immortality, which I mean, low key is probably already happening.
Oh, of course. Yeah,
Um,
jellyfish are immortal.
so are lobsters.
Good for them.
Lobsters are immortal and get more fertile as they age.
Good God. It's a good thing we're putting a stop to that then. So then, wouldn't
Yeah,
it be a good idea to just have one tank with the oldest male lobster and a shit ton of female lobsters? Like,
great
you could
lobster
run a.
harems.
Yeah. Lobster harems are probably a sustainable model for seafood business.
I don't know what's the gestation and breeding time for lobsters?
In
Like
any case, you could just put a crap ton of female lobsters and then cycle them through
that's true.
this insanely fertile, very old male lobster. I don't honestly know that much about lobster breeding.
I don't know much about it either, but that is what I've heard.
So, let's say that there is an immortal lobster who has committed unspeakable crimes.
But it's
What?
the last male
The
lobster.
last male lobster. Wait, yeah. The last male lobster, but this lobster has committed unspeakable crimes. Do you launch it into the black hole, thus ending lobsters forever? I do.
I would. I don't like seafood, so personally, absolutely no loss to me. However, if I was in actually, consider lobsters are very typically expensive food. And if I have control over whether this lobster lives or dies, then clearly I'm going to be lobbied by Big Lobster to
Oh,
keep the evil lobster alive, so that they can continue to make profits off of its offspring. So, the question becomes how much, or like, this has now become a question of price. How much does each crime atrocity worth to me? For example, let's say we have to give a name to this lobster.
Harold.
Fuck you.
Uh, let's call this lobster Herman.
Her.
Herman
Okay.
the evil dead, or the evil immortal last lobster.
Okay, so let's say Herman has murdered a man in cold blood. If Big Lobster were to give me $1,000, I don't think it'd be enough. $100,000. I think I might keep or Herman the Lobster alive.
No, not Larry. Not Big
Not
Larry.
Larry. Not Big Larry. Big Larry's chill. He hasn't committed any crimes yet.
That we know of. Anyway, no, I think you drive the price up all the way, dude. Seafood is like a multi-million-dollar industry. You know, all you got to do is walk over to the East Coast and shake the lobster at them, and the millions will start pouring in.
Okay, but so like, at what point like do you like what moral point can they no longer buy your grace. Like, let's say
Genocide.
that
If Herman the
like
Lobster
Herman
has
the Lobster
sanctioned
was
a genocide, I think at that point you cannot redeem the the lobster in the face of the seafood industry. Now, let's say Herman has only killed one man. I think at that point the proper move is to get Herman. You pull a I forget what the seed company is that does it, but they make seeds that are sterile. So I think you breed Herman with other lobsters, other female lobsters, and then you sterilize the offspring and sell the offspring. That way you have sole control over the lobsters. And no one can have a non-sterile lobster other than Herman.
you'd have to only sterilize the males, though, of course.
Yes.
Okay, so when you're talking genocide, are we talking like only a human genocide, or like any other type of like any other animal genocide? Because if Herman is a being capable of committing or sanctioning a genocide as an animal, then clearly he would have different targets than us humans who only fight amongst ourselves. So, for example, the Great Emu War in Australian history, not actually a war. That was a genocide against emus. So, would Herman the Lobster sanction, like, if he sanctioned a genocide against, I don't know, like
Crabs.
clown crabs?
Crabs. Crabs versus lobsters. Potential
Okay.
future episode.
But so, like, if Herman the Lobster sanctioned a genocide against crabs, like, would you still yeet him into space?
I don't know that the animal kingdom is really my place to. I don't think I have any jurisdiction over the animal kingdom here, so I think it would
I
be
feel like it's a
honestly.
cop out answer since you are making jurisdiction over a specific animal.
Well, for some reason, I'm assuming in this case that I am Herman the Lobster's owner.
Yeah, it's
So I'd be like, God, Herman, why did you start a genocidal war against the crabs? Also, like, why did you kill that guy? But but I think all I can do is disapprove, you know? Like, I'm not going to tell him he's wrong. Maybe he's got good reasons for
you're an enabler.
eradicating the crabs.
You're an enabler. You're
They're
is there
animals, man. It's a different world.
what good reason could Herman have for genociding crabs?
The crabs killed his family.
Really? You're gonna listen,
The
man.
crabs are
I'll
causing more ocean pollution, which will eventually take out all of the marine life. And the only
all right.
way to save all of marine life as it is to let Herman the Lobster commit crab genocide to cull their population. And in that case, I'm fine with it. So Herman can, I mean, I'm not going to
Well, because
approve
the
of it.
genocide.
I'm going to
Well,
say, like, that's a little dicey there, Herman. It's difficult to justify a genocide, but you're as close as I think we can get. And in that case, and that case only, I think that I can leave Herman alive. But anyway, immortal prisoners, huh?
yeah.
You know what? Nah, we're ending the episode.
Yeah,
We're
I
ending
think
the
that's a great
episode.
place. I think that's a great place to leave.
Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you for listening to the ramblings of these two madmen. We'll have new episodes out roughly every week, and please feel free to leave a comment if there's something you would like to hear us discuss, or if you just have any general comments.